Now we're moving to the second part of the session, where we're going to have the benefit of the perspectives from technology developers and how they're responding to the social housing need and opportunity. And our first speaker is Mark Hamilton, who's Managing Director of Solo, which is now part of SMC PLC. Over to you, Mark.
Hi everyone, hope you can hear me okay. My name is Mark Hamilton from SMS PLC. I'm head of flexibility here, and today I'll be presenting on Solo Power, our financed smart solar and storage offering for the social housing market. Here's some background on SMS. We're a 700 million market cap business listed on the London Stock Exchange with a long track record in leveraging low cost of capital private finance into energy asset deployment. SMS is primarily known as a smart metering business with over 1.3 million smart meters installed in homes across the UK. We're now leveraging low-cost finance into our carbon reduction or CARE asset rollout program, where we're offering finance decarbonisation solutions across the UK energy sector. Bit of background on the UK energy system, where we all know we're going through a significant change in the energy system. We're moving from an old system of large, centralised, controllable energy generation from fossil fuel power stations to a new system of low carbon power generation through distributed renewables. This transition is to distributed intermittent renewable generation doesn't come without its challenges. Balancing supply and demand will become much more challenging, and so along with intermittent renewables, we need smart energy storage and flexibility systems to balance the grid. So what does the renewables look like on the UK grid today? Here's a snapshot from the UK grid in August last year, showing electricity demand in grey on top against wind and solar generation below in green. So you can see a baseline of wind generation with daily solar peaks coming in on top. So renewables are really starting to make a significant contribution to our electricity demand, but the increased penetration of intermittent renewables does create challenges for the smooth operation of the UK grid. So as of today, the level of electricity demand on the grid needs to be exactly the same as the level of electricity generation feeding into the grid. So every second of the day, we need to have a supply and demand balance. So this is called grid balancing, and currently this is achieved primarily through using controllable fossil fuel generation to fill the gaps between renewable generation and demand. So what is it going to look like in the future when we move to further increased renewable generation? How are we going to balance the grid when we've got lots more renewables coming on? So if we multiply existing wind and solar capacity by around 4, this will produce enough electricity to meet demand on an annual basis, but this is what the future would look like if we add 4 times the amount of wind and solar capacity onto the system. So a very peaky picture of oversupply at times with significant undersupply at other times. So we need to be smart with future renewable generation rollout, and this is where batteries come in, as well as other forms of flexibility. So taking the solar generation peaks that you see here, this level of solar generation, for example, could be achieved by fitting solar panels to around 7 million homes in the UK, which is entirely achievable. So there's about 1 million homes with solar as of today. So if instead of just deploying solar, we also fit battery storage to homes that are getting solar panels installed and use them to store that solar generation for later use in the home, it'll remove the very big peaks that we saw in the previous picture and allow these homes to use the majority of this low cost, low carbon generation directly on site. Furthermore, smart control of batteries and other flexible electrical loads such as EV charging, electrical heating, hot water systems will allow us to start shaping electricity demand to follow the intermittency of renewables. So we're really starting to use flexibility to manage the intermittency of renewables coming onto the grid. So we believe the social housing sector can play a very significant role in the energy transition. Landlords are looking to decarbonise their housing stock and address fuel poverty. Solar rollout is a great way to achieve it, but financing this is a challenge in the post-feed-in tariff era. Our finance solar and storage program is what we believe the market is looking for. So Solar Power is a financed turnkey smart solar and storage service developed specifically for the social housing market. We offer solar and battery installation across your housing stock at no upfront cost to you and your tenant, with a guarantee to reduce tenant electricity bills by up to 25% compared to standard grid supply tariffs. There's naturally a range of decarbonisation and retrofit measures which landlords can look at, from insulation upgrades to switching from gas to electric heating. And our turnkey service includes a design phase which assesses all options available. However, we believe solar and storage is somewhat of an easy win for decarbonising quickly while addressing fuel poverty. So here's how it works. The majority of social housing tenants have their electricity supplied from the grid, where they pay their energy supplier a rate of typically 17 pence per kilowatt hour for every unit that they use. Solar power involves fitting a solar and battery system at no upfront costs. We can work with landlords if they wish to bring in their own low-cost financing. However, with 100% financed option, we enter into a long-term power purchase agreement contract with the landlord to sell the solar power we generate to you at a fixed PPA rate, which is lower than standard grid supply tariffs. The landlord then recovers the PPA costs from their tenant through a fixed charge, for example, increased rent, or a variable charge like a monthly solar bill. Of course, this leads to a bill saving for the tenant, regardless of how it's done. The meter readings for solar generation are supplied through our system, and we provide a billing support service to make it easy for you to do that. Meanwhile, your tenant is free to choose any energy supplier and tariff for the remaining grid supply. By choosing a suitable tariff with at least 2 rates, so a peak and off-peak type tariff or the more dynamic smart tariff, our tariff optimization service optimizes charging of the battery during off-peak times, or times when the tariff rates drop when there's an oversupply of renewables on the grid. So, for example, on a windy, sunny day, this pushes wholesale electricity prices down, and if you can take that power at the time and you're on a suitable tariff, you'll see significant savings. So this dynamic charging significantly helps in decarbonising the wider UK grid by supporting intermittent renewable generation, as I mentioned earlier. All this results in significant savings to your tenants compared to the do-nothing approach. So on standard grid supply on the left, the typical domestic electricity bill is just under £800 a year, with solar power through the majority, around 70% of electricity being supplied directly on site from solar at a lower rate than grid supply. In addition to off-peak charging from the grid, we expect to save tenants around 25% compared to standard grid supply, and all this while decarbonising your housing stock and supporting the wider renewables transition across the UK. I won't go into detail on this slide, you can follow up and read through it afterwards, but the basics of the tariff optimization service involve smart charging batteries from the grid during off-peak times and discharging this stored energy to power the home during peak demand periods to maximise bill savings for your tenants. Here's a quick overview of what the system does over the course of a year. During the winter, when less solar is generated, more supply will come from the grid, from sources such as wind energy, for example, which generate more during the winter. During the summer, the vast majority of demand will be met by on-site solar supply, with the remainder being exported to the grid, the green bits that you see here, at times when it's most needed. So typically during the evening peak demand period, we can export from the battery system to feed the wider grid as well as feeding home demand. So are there any risks in entering into a long-term PPA contract? Like what if retail electricity prices come down in the future? This graph shows the increase in retail electricity prices over the past 10 years, showing an average 4% annual increase in grid-supplied electricity. The projections here, the dashed line shows the increase in retail electricity prices based on just a 3% price inflation. So even at this level, the savings of the solar power approach versus standard grid supply will be very significant. So solar power delivers immediate decarbonisation of electricity supply. The net generation from on-site solar delivers a carbon saving of around 90% versus standard grid supply. So it's a very, as I said, kind of quick win in terms of decarbonising. How does the business model work? Again, you can read through this in detail afterwards, but we recover the cost of our asset investment partly through the solar PPA payments, but these alone are not enough to recover the full investment costs. So we also need to generate further revenue through merchant grid trading or grid balancing services. And this is where our FlexiGrid aggregation platform comes in. FlexiGrid is a cloud-based aggregation platform which allows us to monitor and control distributed energy resources such as batteries as a virtual power plant. So we closely monitor and forecast what's happening on the electricity system, and using advanced data analytics and our IoT control, operate assets across our portfolio to deliver valuable services to the UK grid, such as frequency response and balancing mechanism, which help to balance the grid. Revenue from these services are essential to make the business model work and are delivered in the background without impacting on your tenants' electricity bills. Here's a quick snapshot from FlexiGrid showing the detailed analytics and control capability which enables the system. Our platform assesses what flexible capacity is available across our asset portfolio and beds this flexibility into various markets such as frequency response and the balancing market. So this generates further revenue to make the business model work and crucially supports the wider decarbonisation of the UK grid. Again, I won't go into the detail of this slide, you can read through it afterwards, but we're very much offering an end-to-end service where we initially go through a design phase to understand what your housing stock is like, what range of decarbonisation measures are available to you. The focus on this product is very much about solar and battery service. So we then run through a financing study to understand whether we bring in the lowest cost of capital finance or you do. Either way, we then progress to a supply and install phase. We can use your contracted resources for that if you have framework contractors already in place. The real USP of our offering is around the optimization, metering and billing support service, which is provided whether we provide the financing or you do. And then at the end of life, we look to recycle or repower the project with a further install. So we're involved in quite a few demonstration projects across the UK, which are demonstrating this smart local energy systems approach, including the Reflex project in Orkney, which is 50% funded by Innovate UK, and a project with Aberdeenshire Council. We're deploying a smart solar and storage program across 500 homes in their housing stock. So we're now actively looking to engage with as many landlords as are interested to progress commercial rollout programs across the UK, and would love to speak to anyone interested to get involved. That's about it for me. You can contact us here. I'm very happy to take any other questions at the end.